You ever notice how people walk around pretending they're made of stainless steel? Like nothing embarrassing has ever happened to them. Like their browser history is pure, their thoughts are noble, and their lives are curated by some invisible PR team. It's amazing the amount of energy we spend trying to look normal. Not even good, just normal. Like we're terrified someone might catch a glimpse of who we actually are underneath all that smiling and nodding, and yes, of course I'm fine. And the funniest part is everybody's doing the same thing. Everyone is hiding something, everyone is pretending, and everyone thinks they're the only one doing it. But then there's that moment, always unplanned, always inconvenient, where the truth slips out. Something you didn't mean to say, or a reaction you didn't mean to show, or a tiny confession that just falls out of your mouth before your brain can stage a protest. And it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, sometimes it's humiliating. You feel your soul leave your body for a second, but there's also something honest about it. Something that makes the people around you suddenly see you as a real human being instead of a walking list of polite phrases. That little awkward truth does more to connect you with people than any perfectly polished conversation ever could. The thing is, most people go through their whole lives trying to avoid that moment. They want control. They want to manage every impression. They want to rehearse being human. But nobody's rehearsing with them. We're all improvising badly. And at some point, you realize that the only difference between you and everybody else is that your mistakes happen to be caught in better lighting. You're not special. Your awkwardness isn't unique. It's just that most people pretend their awkward truths don't exist while you accidentally announce yours like a public service announcement. There's something freeing about admitting the things we usually hide. Not because it's comfortable, it isn't, but because it's real. When you put awkward honesty into words, you take the power away from the shame that usually wraps itself around it. You expose that tiny, shaky truth to the air, and suddenly it doesn't own you anymore. And other people hear it and realize they're not the only ones carrying around some quiet little panic inside their chest. They start to relax. They start to breathe. They start to show their own awkward truths too, because now it feels allowed. And it's funny how the smallest truths are the ones we're most afraid to say. Not the big dramatic ones, not the life-changing confessions. It's the simple stuff. The stuff we all experience. The stuff we all think but never admit. The things that shouldn't matter but somehow define us. Like the petty thoughts that sneak up on you when you're trying to be a good person. Or the weird rituals you do when no one's watching. Or the tiny jealousies, the pointless frustrations, the irrational fears. Those are the truths that make us human. And they're also the ones we lock away like evidence from a crime we didn't commit but feel guilty for anyway. You know what really scares people? Not being judged, being seen. Because once someone sees your awkward truth, they can't unsee it. You can't take it back, you can't polish it or rewrite it. It's out there, living its own life now. And that's terrifying. Because we think our awkwardness disqualifies us from being respected or taken seriously or seen as competent or stable or whatever title we're trying to hold on to. But the truth is, the awkward moments are the only ones that prove you're not running on autopilot. They're the only moments where your real self shows up. And when you let that part of you show, people don't pull away, they lean in. Because they recognize themselves in you. They see that you're not performing. You're not trying to win. You're not pretending to be above them. You're right there with them in the messy, uncomfortable, unfiltered space where honesty lives. That's where trust comes from. Not from perfection, but from imperfection that isn't afraid to breathe. So when I talk about uncomfortable honesty, I'm not talking about being brutally truthful with everyone around you like some kind of emotional wrecking ball. I'm talking about being truthful with yourself first, about the parts you hide, the parts you overthink, the parts you wish you didn't have. When you can look at those parts without flinching, suddenly you're not controlled by them anymore. You're not scared of being found out because you found yourself already. And oddly enough, people respect that. They don't respect the flawless mask. They respect the person who isn't afraid to admit that the mask exists. And maybe that's why awkward truths matter so much. They remind us that the human experience isn't clean. It's jagged. It's uneven. It's full of stumbles, missteps, and dark little corners we pretend aren't there. But when you shine a light on those corners, even if the light is shaky and your hand is trembling, you give everyone else permission to do the same. And suddenly the world feels a little less lonely, a little less pretentious, a little less exhausting. You ever notice how the moments that reveal who we really are never happen when we're ready for them? They don't show up when you're calm, composed, well-dressed, saying all the right things, and looking like you rehearsed your entire existence. No. Real humanity leaks out in the exact moments you wish the universe would just give you 5 seconds to get it together. It shows up when you trip over your own feet in front of someone you were trying to impress, or when you say "you too" to the waiter who tells you to enjoy your meal, or when you panic laugh at the worst possible moment. It's always awkward, it's always uncomfortable, and it's always the most honest version of you. It's strange how much truth hides inside awkwardness. You'd think truth would show up looking noble and confident, wrapped in some kind of emotional armor. But no, truth crawls in wearing mismatched socks, breathing too fast, and saying things your brain wishes your mouth had reconsidered. That's the real human condition, this constant tug of war between trying to be smooth and realizing over and over again that you're built out of nerves and impulses and half-finished thoughts. We act like awkwardness is some kind of flaw that needs to be fixed. But the truth is, awkwardness is just what happens when the real you collides with the world faster than your filters can catch up. It's the moment when all the practice lines fall apart. And in that collapse, something honest slips through, something raw, something that reminds everyone that underneath whatever image you try to carry around, you're still just a human being trying to figure out how to exist without accidentally knocking over the emotional furniture in the room. And the funny thing is, we try so hard to avoid those moments. We rehearse conversations in our heads, we overthink texts, we plan how to react to things that haven't even happened, but the universe has no interest in your plans. It wants the truth, and it will drag it out of you in the most uncomfortable way possible. That moment when your voice cracks for no reason, that's the universe going, yeah, this is who you are right now. Deal with it. That moment when you try to act confident, but your hands start doing something weird, like they forgot they've been hands your whole life. That's the universe tapping you on the shoulder saying, relax, you're human, stop auditioning. Awkwardness is the crack where the authentic self shines through. It's proof that you're not operating on autopilot. It means you're present, you're alive, you're affected. When someone's too polished, too composed, too perfectly timed in everything they do, you don't trust them. You feel like you're talking to an ad campaign. But when they stumble over a sentence, when their emotions slip out before the script, when they accidentally reveal the little truth they were trying to hide, that's when you start believing them. Because now you see the person, not the performance. And that's the irony. Awkwardness builds connection more than smoothness ever will. People don't bond over perfect moments. They bond over the moments where the mask falls, where the truth stutters its way into the room and stands there quietly asking if anyone else feels the same way. And more often than not, they do. They just didn't say it first. The most telling moments of our lives, the ones we remember, the ones that shape us, aren't the moments when we looked impressive. They're the moments when we were caught off guard, when our guard dropped, when something inside us said the truth out loud, even if we weren't prepared for the consequences. Those moments linger because they show our real edges, our real fears, our real wants, and those edges are what make us recognizable to each other. What's fascinating is how awkwardness has this strange habit of exposing whatever we're trying least to reveal. You're trying to look calm, your hands start shaking, you're trying to seem uninterested, you blush, you're trying to act like you understand what someone said, you nod too hard, and now it looks like you're agreeing to donate a kidney. Awkwardness doesn't lie. It tells the truth even when you don't want it to. And maybe that's why awkwardness is the purest form of honesty we have left. Because it's unplanned, it's unscripted, it's the moment where your brain takes a coffee break and the truth shows up wearing sweatpants. You can't pretend during those moments. You can't control the narrative. You can't edit yourself in real time. You just have to stand there and let the real you exist, even if that version is slightly confused and blinking too much. But here's the thing. Once you embrace that reality, once you stop trying to eliminate awkwardness and start recognizing it as the proof that you're alive and feeling things, you become more grounded in who you are. You stop fearing those moments and start using them. You start letting them reveal what matters instead of trying to hide what scares you. You ever notice how everyone carries around this image of themselves like it's a resume they've carefully curated, polished, and framed behind glass? And then somewhere in the middle of a conversation, or a glance in the mirror, or a text you sent at 2 a.m., the gap between that carefully constructed self and the real self becomes glaringly obvious. We like to think we're one person, neat, tidy, consistent. But in reality, there's this messy, contradictory version of us that shows up uninvited, usually at the worst possible moment. And that gap, that tension between the version of yourself you want to be and the version you actually are, is where all the human drama lives. The funny thing is, we spend so much energy trying to shrink that gap. We rehearse, we edit, we craft personas that can survive casual scrutiny. We smile when we don't want to. laugh when we'd rather roll our eyes, nod when we're thinking about how to escape the room. We act like that polished version is who we are, and the messy, contradictory version is something to be ashamed of, something to hide. But here's the kicker: that messy version is real. That messy version is living. That messy version is the one actually thinking, feeling, noticing, surviving. And the more we pretend it doesn't exist, the more exhausting it becomes to maintain the illusion. It's ironic, isn't it? We think we're protecting ourselves by hiding the messy truth, when in reality, we're suffocating ourselves. You can't pour from an empty bottle, and the longer you ignore the contradictions inside you, the more they leak out in ways you can't control. You snap at a friend over nothing, you freeze during a meeting, you laugh at something sad. The world doesn't see the careful narrative you've constructed, they see the tension, the crack, the human being trying to make sense of it all. And usually, the more you fight it, the louder it gets. The gap between who we pretend to be and who we actually are is not just a personal inconvenience, it's the source of almost every internal conflict we have. It's the reason we lie to ourselves about what we want, what we need, and who we are allowed to be. We imagine a better version of ourselves, a version that would be accepted without question, admired without reservation. And somehow, we forget that the very thing we admire in others is usually the courage to exist in full contradictions and all. When you catch yourself envying someone else's confidence or authenticity, it's often because they're not afraid of the gap. They've accepted it. They've leaned into it. They've decided that trying to erase the messy edges isn't worth it. And that's where the liberation begins. The moment you stop trying to erase the gap, the moment you stop pretending that the polished version of yourself is all that matters, you can start seeing life differently. You stop fearing judgment because you realize everyone has the same tension inside them. Everyone has that messy version they're trying to hide. Everyone is balancing the impossible equation of what they want to be with what they actually are. And once you recognize that, you start to forgive yourself for your own contradictions, your own failures, your own ridiculous little impulses that make you feel both human and hopelessly awkward. Think about it. There's a strange kind of relief in admitting that you're inconsistent, that you sometimes act against your better judgment, that you care too much or too little or at exactly the wrong moment. Because in that admission, you stop pretending, and pretending is exhausting. Pretending is a full-time job that nobody can sustain without cracking, and the cracks are where the real stories hide. That's where other people see you, not the airbrushed image, but the real person struggling and stumbling and somehow making it work anyway. The gap is also where creativity, spontaneity, and connection live. It's where you notice that the perfectly planned life isn't as interesting as the life that surprises you, that shakes you, that forces you to think and adapt and feel. If you try to eliminate every contradiction, every tension, every messy impulse, you're left with a predictable, bland version of existence that nobody remembers. The tension, the gap, the contradiction, that's the spice, the texture, the thing that makes you human, makes you compelling, makes your presence felt. And here's the punchline we often forget. The polished, perfect version of yourself that you're trying so hard to show the world is mostly a mirage. It's a story you've told yourself about who you should be. But the messy, contradictory, imperfect version, that one is unstoppable. That one keeps showing up no matter how many scripts you write, no matter how many filters you put on your life. And the sooner you stop resisting it, the sooner you can actually live. The sooner you embrace it, the sooner you realize that perfection is a fantasy, and authenticity, with all its gaps and cracks, is the only currency that matters. So the next time you feel that tension gnawing at you, that small panic that whispers, this isn't who you're supposed to be, just remember, the gap isn't your enemy, it's the space where truth lives. It's the space where connection begins. It's the space that proves you're alive, that proves you're thinking, that proves you're human. And the moment you start leaning into it, instead of hiding from it, that's the moment you finally stop trying to perform for the world and start existing for yourself. You ever notice how life has this sneaky way of hitting you with situations that are completely unprepared for? And your first instinct is to panic, hide, or explain yourself before anyone else can notice? But then there's this other, much stranger instinct that some people have. They laugh. Not the polite, oh, that's cute kind of laugh. Not the nervous chuckle to cover embarrassment, but a deep, almost reckless laugh that comes from the recognition that everything is messy, impossible, absurd, and completely out of your control. And that laugh, as ridiculous as it seems in the moment, is one of the most powerful tools we have. Because laughing at yourself really letting yourself feel the absurdity of being alive, is an act of survival. Think about it. We spend so much of our lives trying to control how others see us, trying to act competent, put together, acceptable, and in that effort, we trap ourselves in this pressure cooker of expectation. We try to avoid mistakes, avoid shame, avoid judgment, avoid anything that could make us look, even for a second, like we're failing at life. But life is relentless. It doesn't care about your carefully crafted image. It doesn't pause for you to rehearse your reactions or polish your words. It just throws things at you, ridiculous and unfair and utterly unavoidable, and the only thing you can do sometimes is laugh. And that laughter, that little rebellion against panic and shame, is how we survive the impossible parts of being human. Laughter exposes a truth that words alone often cannot. When you laugh at yourself, you're acknowledging your flaws, your mistakes, your contradictions, your awkwardness. You're saying, yes, this is me. This is ridiculous, but this is me. And in that acknowledgement, there's a release of freedom. You stop being controlled by the fear of judgment. You stop letting embarrassment dictate your actions. You stop hiding. And oddly enough, that release doesn't just make you feel lighter, it makes the people around you breathe easier too. Because everyone is carrying around the same messy human package of fears, mistakes, and insecurities. When they see you laughing, truly laughing, it's permission for them to do the same. The power of laughing at yourself is also about resilience. It's a quiet defiance against the pressure to be perfect, to be serious, to maintain some unattainable standard. Life will always hand you situations where you will look foolish, where things will go wrong, where your plans will collapse spectacularly. The person who can meet those moments with laughter doesn't escape the failure, but they survive it differently. They don't shrink from it. They don't crumble under it. They acknowledge it, name it, embrace it for what it is, and then move forward. There's strength in that. There's courage in that. Because it takes guts to laugh at the parts of yourself that society tells you to hide. And it's not just the big dramatic failures that deserve this kind of laughter. It's the small, everyday absurdities, the little humiliations, the things that make you shake your head and wonder how you're even functioning. Like sending a text to the wrong person, or walking into a room and forgetting why you came, or trying to look serious in a meeting while your stomach decides to grumble like it's auditioning for a comedy. These moments are tiny, but they're everywhere. And when you meet them with humor, you disarm them. You take the sting out of embarrassment. You turn awkwardness into a bridge instead of a barrier. Humor also has this way of keeping perspective in check. We get so wrapped up in our own drama, our own fears, our own sense of catastrophe, that it becomes unbearable if taken seriously. But laughter cuts through that intensity. It reminds us that, yes, we are flawed, life is chaotic, the universe is indifferent, and yet here we are, breathing, noticing, interacting, stumbling, surviving. That contradiction, how small and ridiculous we are, and yet how persistent and enduring, is both terrifying and hilarious. And the laughter is what lets us hold both truths at the same time without collapsing under the weight. Another thing about laughing at yourself is that it's contagious in the best possible way. When someone sees you owning your mistakes with humor, they feel safer to own theirs. When you acknowledge your absurdities openly, other people recognize their own absurdities and feel less alone in them. It's a form of connection. The way truth shared is a thread that ties people together, and that connection is part of the survival we're talking about: emotional survival, social survival, sanity survival. Being human is messy, and laughter is the glue that helps hold the messy pieces together. And maybe the most beautiful part of all this is that laughing at yourself doesn't just make life bearable, it makes it meaningful. It transforms struggle into story, mistakes into lessons, awkwardness into identity. The act of laughing is itself a statement. I see myself, I see the ridiculousness, I see the truth, and I choose to meet it with life rather than fear. There's a defiance in that choice, a refusal to be crushed by shame, a willingness to exist fully, unfiltered, and unapologetically. So when everything feels too heavy, when the awkward moments pile up, when life shows you its absurd side, laughter isn't just a release, it's armor. It's recognition, connection, survival, and even a little rebellion all rolled into one. And in that laughter, we find the strength to face tomorrow, to face ourselves, and to keep going, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's messy, even when it's completely ridiculous.